But for the moment, we go over to Martin Lewis for a bulletin of the news.
Journey to the Spencer family home, where she will be laid to rest. This morning, her sons, Princes William and Harry, accompanied by their father, the Prince of Wales, the Duke of Edinburgh, and Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, walked behind the coffin on the last stage of its journey to Westminster Abbey. Breaking with convention, Earl Spencer used his funeral tribute to criticise the royal family and renew his attack on the media. First, our correspondent David Loyne reports on the events of the morning.
With military precision, but the minimum of military pomp, Diana began her final journey. There was some crying and shouts of bless you at the start, but most of the crowd preferred to watch and mourn in silence as the coffin travelled the 4-mile route from her London home, Kensington Palace, where it had rested overnight, to Westminster Abbey. Stripped of all the usual trappings of a royal funeral, with just her pallbearers from the Welsh Guards and horses led by the King's troop, it made its solitary journey. Lonely, but not alone, for the people whose pressure has forced so many changes in the arrangements this week have come out in force today, lining the route which was lengthened so that more could see. At Buckingham Palace, which has become a shrine, the Queen led other members of the royal family to pay their respects at the side of the road, just like thousands of her subjects were doing. And with them, the Duchess of York, who shared so much with Diana. The 3 wreaths on the coffin were from Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, and her 2 sons, the Princes William and Harry. One carried only the single word, Mummy. And then, for the 2 boys, the hardest moment of their young lives. Walking with their father, uncle and grandfather, following the coffin for the last part of this sad journey. And behind them, not dignitaries or soldiers or marching bands, but 500 invited members of Diana's charities. The flexibility and spontaneity and care she showed in her life, reflected now after her death. Earl Spencer put a consoling arm around Prince Harry's shoulder at Horse Guards before they came out again into the sunlight of Whitehall. There was little formal protocol in the guest list for Westminster Abbey. Luciano Pavarotti arrived to applause from the crowd. He said he was too upset to sing. Elton John would sing. He came with George Michael. And there were other friends of the Princess of Wales, Richard Branson and Lord Attenborough, as well as more expected members of the British establishment, the Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition and Foreign Secretary, among others. Mohammed Al Fayed, the father of Dodi, who was Diana's companion on the day she died, arrived visibly moved. And the Queen Mother came separately from most of her family. She is as old as the century and can never have believed that she would see this day. But this was not the royal family's day, it was the Spencers. Diana's mother and her 2 sisters were closely involved in deciding the order of service. Diana's favourite hymn, sung at her wedding and now at her funeral. The Dean of Westminster led the prayers, urging those who listened to commit themselves as Diana had to caring for others. The Prime Minister read a lesson, and Diana's sisters read short poems. And after this long week, Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, only just managed to finish a powerful and passionate tribute.
I would like to end by thanking God for the small mercies he's shown us at this dreadful time, for taking Diana at her most beautiful and radiant, and when she had joy in her private life. Above all, we give thanks for the life of a woman I'm so proud to be able to call my sister. The unique, the complex, the extraordinary and irreplaceable Diana, whose beauty, both internal and external, will never be extinguished from our minds.
Goodbye, England's rose. May you ever grow in our hearts. You are the grace that placed yourselves where lives were torn apart. You called out to our country, and you whispered to those in pain. Now you belong to heaven, and the stars spell out your name.
The coffin paused at the end of the church for a minute of silence, observed here and across the land. Then Diana's coffin went on its long journey, taking her home to Althorpe. The most modern of women, on a progress across Britain with almost medieval overtones. Flowers strew her way. David Loyne, BBC News.
Earl Spencer's funeral oration highlighted differences between Princess Diana and the royal family about how her son should be brought up. He pledged that he, his mother and sisters, whom he called Diana's blood family, would do all they could to ensure that the two young princes were not simply immersed in duty and tradition, but could, as he put it, sing openly as Diana had planned. Earl Spencer also took the opportunity to launch a bitter attack on what he called the media's permanent quest to bring the princess down. Gavin Esler reports.
Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, walked to the abbey behind her coffin, flanked by his two nephews, Princes Harry and William, the Duke of Edinburgh and Prince Charles. But he used the platform of his address to the mourners in the abbey throughout Britain and across the world, not merely to celebrate his sister's remarkable achievements, but also to refer pointedly to her frustrations with royal life.
Diana was the very essence of compassion, of duty, of style, of beauty. All over the world, she was a symbol of selfless humanity, a standard bearer for the rights of the truly downtrodden, a very British girl who transcended nationality, someone with a natural nobility who was classless, and who proved in the last year that she needed no royal title to continue to generate her particular brand of magic.
He spoke of her as a very insecure person whose eating disorders were a symptom of vulnerability, the most bizarre life imaginable, he called it, which led her to consider exile from Britain.
There is no doubt that she was looking for a new direction in her life at this time. She talked endlessly of getting away from England, mainly because of the treatment that she received at the hands of the newspapers. I don't think she ever understood why her genuinely good intentions were sneered at by the media, why there appeared to be a permanent quest on their behalf to bring her down. It is baffling. My own and only explanation is that genuine goodness is threatening to those at the opposite end of the moral spectrum.
Then, standing not far from the royal family and with hundreds of millions of viewers watching in central London and on worldwide television, Earl Spencer directly raised the unhappiness at the core of her life, promising the young princes would not be suffocated by the strains of royal duty.
She would want us today to pledge ourselves to protecting her beloved boys, William and Harry, from a similar fate. And I do this here, Diana, on your behalf. We will not allow them to suffer the anguish that used regularly to drive you to tearful despair. And beyond that, on behalf of your mother and sisters, I pledge that we, your blood family, will do all we can to continue the imaginative and loving way in which you are steering these two exceptional young men, so that their souls are not simply immersed by duty and tradition, but can sing openly as you planned. We fully respect the heritage into which they have both been born, and will always respect and encourage them in their royal role. But we, like you, recognize the need for them to experience as many different aspects of life as possible, to arm them spiritually and emotionally for the years ahead.
In a week when protocol has repeatedly been shredded, Earl Spencer's remarks produce thunderous applause at a funeral. And their implications will echo beyond these walls, the ceremony and the crowds of mourners into the future of the monarchy itself. Gavin Esler, BBC News.
Tens of thousands of people spent the night along the procession route to secure a vantage point to watch the funeral cortege. Many based themselves at Kensington Palace to witness the start of the procession. Our court correspondent Clarence Mitchell was there.
As dawn roused slumbering mourners at Kensington Palace, the crowds here knew that what they were about to witness would be painful. But in the respectful silence of their anticipation, there was unity, a sense that they had to be here. Behind Diana's former home, the gun carriage that would convey her coffin before the eyes of millions around the world was being readied. The horses to draw her at rest before performing their solemn duty. And when Diana began her journey to her final resting place, the cortege moving through the people, for some it was overwhelming.
It was beautiful though, elegant. It was, I kept thinking I knew that I knew it had happened, but I realized I still was in shock until I saw it.
It was a very sad occasion. I don't think this country is going to see anything as sad for a long time.
Can you describe your emotions as she went by?
Not really. I can't.
To pay their respects, to mark Diana's passing, to simply say goodbye to their princess. That's why everyone here came onto the streets in such numbers. Witnessing the cortege was, for many, the culmination of the week's profound emotions.
Goodbye, rose. May you well grow in our hearts.
And for the thousands watching the service on huge video screens at Hyde Park, the involvement was total. This was the tribute so many wanted for Diana, the woman whose radiance touched people across the world, her life being celebrated in the sunshine of a late summer's day. Clarence Mitchell, BBC News.
Well, now a brief look at other news. Large crowds have gathered in Calcutta to pay their last respects to Mother Theresa, who died of a heart attack last night. Thousands of people have been waiting in heavy rain outside the headquarters of the Missionaries of Charity, which she founded nearly 50 years ago to help the poor of the city. Her funeral will be held next Saturday. And the conductor, Sir George Solti, one of the world's most highly respected musicians, has died at the age of 84. Sir George, a Hungarian who took British nationality in 1974, was known for his energetic conducting style. For 10 years he was music director at the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden, and after that he worked with many of the world's leading orchestras. He was on holiday in the south of France when he died. Astronauts on Mir failed to find any sign of a leak during a 5.5-hour spacewalk today. Michael Foley and Anatoly Solyov examined 2 areas of the hull damaged in a collision with a supply ship last June, but couldn't find the puncture. They did manage to realign some of the solar panels that power the ship. That's all from the newsroom for the moment. Back now to David Dimbleby at Westminster Abbey.
And here outside Westminster Abbey, we will continue to watch the funeral cortege, the hearse that's taking the princess up to Northampton for her burial later this afternoon. And we'll be hearing from people who've followed the hearse when it left Kensington Palace and came to Westminster Abbey, and when it went from Westminster Abbey on its way through North London, hear from people about their reaction to what was said and to the service itself.